Welcome, Deena Dadachanji, to our program, to the conference, the third annual Compassionate Educator Conference. We're focusing on the strengths, so we're helping schools and educators to give the lens of, to look with the lens of strengths towards the students. And today your talk would be about focusing more on the social and emotional education. And this is what you say, like, this is our super strength.
Mm-hmm.
And your background is like years and years in education, and you took your master's as in international education, and as well you created an alternative way of schooling, having this kind of micro school. You mentioned that micro school, where you have a program called SEEK,
Mm-hmm.
social emotional. What else? Social emotional
Education for
education
kids.
kids,
Yeah.
kids. And you have a specific way and a program to introduce the perspective of developing the whole child, cultivating a space where social and emotional intelligence would flourish and develop within the childhood into the adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have confident and resilient children to like navigate their way through life. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you do that? And why do you say that social emotional education is a superpower?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and for this very gracious introduction. So yeah, social emotional education is something that is often overlooked, or certain parts of social emotional education are often selected and they are kind of emphasized over other skills. So for example, so just to define social and emotional education, there's a social part and then there's the emotional part. So the social part is kind of more common. It's kind of the soft skills, what you call soft skills these days, which is common in school and education realm, as well as in corporate realms and kind of, other fields as well now. And so those are skills like leadership, conflict resolution, problem solving, teamwork, time management, all of these kinds of things involve social skills. And then there are emotional skills, and those are our ability to, manage our relationships, kind of move through when we feel certain emotions, whether that's joy, whether that's anger, whether that's sadness, sometimes difficult or challenging emotions, sometimes good, positive emotions that we want to feel, as well as our interaction with other people when we have an emotional charge, or there is a high level of certain emotions going through or going on. So this, I think, is something, because it's not easily measured, because it's not something that we can really quantify or evaluate in a traditional sense. I think that these skills have sort of taken a backseat in the education realm, but also, in the world at large, and in a lot of different fields. And I think now that there is a movement, with the work of psychologists and counselors and teachers and, doctors, even especially since COVID, since the pandemic, and the mental health kind of has been brought to the forefront, that these skills are really being seen as some of the core skills that we actually need as a prerequisite to succeed. So, if you are going to have skills around intelligence and creativity and innovation, really you have to have a strong foundation of social and emotional skills to be able to jump off of that and use your skills of innovation, use your skills of creativity, use, all these other gifts and talents that we've been focusing, whether that's academic success, artistic success. But if you yourself don't feel like a whole person, you don't feel like you have a handle and an understanding on your own emotions, what's going on internally, then you're very limited to using those other skills, applying them, and being successful in life. So I really feel like it's a very underlooked skill set, and a very essential skill set at the same time. So it's kind of that's why my focus has been on this area, because I've seen once children have a sense of social and emotional security, they really thrive. They really go forward. They have strength. They have confidence. They're not afraid to take risks. They're more likely to, because creativity and learning is a risk-taking endeavor. We have to be comfortable with not knowing, with the unknown. And to do that, you have to have a certain level of confidence and a sense of security within yourself to navigate that. So without, having that social and emotional security as a foundation, you can't really learn, you can't really teach. And even in the realm of teachers and staff, and in an educational setting, I know that many of your audience are administrators, and you can't actually get even adults to apply their talent and their skills without them feeling safe, secure on a social and emotional level.
Okay, let me ask you a question from your own personal realities of education. You were in Singapore, and then now you are in Dubai, and you found yourself there in Dubai because you are you formed a group with micro schooling, alternative way of schooling. So how it is different from Singapore is really high in education, and what is really missing there that made you to have this switch or shifting to alternative schooling?
Right. So my process through my career has also been very personal. It's been very professional as well, but also personal. And my initial, I started out as a teacher because I love kids. I have a gift for teaching. It's something that is natural for me. I am able to easily build a connection and advance a child's learning. And I knew that from a very young age. I used to do tutoring and side jobs, even as I was a child myself. And so when I pursued teaching, I really had this dream of, international education as being an answer to some of the problems that we face globally, because I myself was raised in Dubai and have been to international schools myself. And when I grew up and I moved to Canada, I realized what a benefit this kind of way of schooling provided for me, to be educated with people from all over the world, different cultures, different religions, and they're your best friends, they're your peers, they're your teachers, it's like a little small world in your classroom. And that's how I was taught. That's how I grew up. And so I really had this idea that this is the way of the future of teaching. It's really, to build a peaceful country or to build a peaceful world, we have to build peace in classrooms first. So I always had that dream to start a school that was, had this international kind of feel. And I just continued to pursue the career in international education. As you mentioned, I had my master's. I got my master's in international education. I went to taught in amazing schools in Dubai, moved to Singapore, taught and did some leadership in amazing schools there. And then I actually reached a personal point of burnout. I was working really hard. I was, on paper, it all looked really great. I was getting, the promotion, and I was getting the raise, and I was, successful. And yet I just felt like, as a teacher and with the children, they were doing well, but there were some missing pieces, and I just couldn't at some point reconcile that. And so I actually took a break from teaching. I finished my contract in Singapore, and I took a break of a year and a half, and I traveled. I had the opportunity to travel to different countries and experience different models of education, different ways that people are teaching children, more in an alternative way. So not the traditional schooling systems that were, the IB or the British curriculum, the American curriculum, but different models of education. So looking at Steiner schools, looking at the Reggio Emilia, the Montessori framework, the Bali Green School, different methodologies. And that's when I realized that, education in its essence, for us to learn and for us to develop in any area, whether that's academic or creative or any endeavor, anything that we choose to learn, we have to first be open. Our mind has to be open. We have to be in a place of curiosity. And if as a child you are not, you don't have the basic needs met, to have that openness of heart and mind, then you can't really learn. And so oftentimes, in school, children are, they have a lot going on at home, especially children in, immigrant populations or racialized children, depending on the country. So there are some countries where children are experiencing war, where children are experiencing poverty, or just stress. Even in Western countries, children might be stressed out. They might have pressure from home. They might be bullied. They might have social pressure. These are all states that put our system not in a state of openness and curiosity to learn. It puts us in a space of kind of this shutdown or fear or vigilance, where your self-preservation is a priority, not learning a new skill or excelling in some subject. So I started to realize that there are some essential components that need to be in place before a child is able to learn. And once those are in place, through my experiences, I realized once those are in place, the learning process is natural. It is not even something we have to do or try or implement. It's really like a natural process that like nature has intended us to learn, to grow, to develop, to evolve. Like a seed, evolves an acorn. It just, with the right material, the right soil, the right sun, the right water, it grows into an oak tree. You don't have to interfere with the process. You don't have to pull it this way, pull it that way. And it's the same with us. It's just that we have to make sure that that environment is safe and it's a nourishing environment. So that's what led me to start to question the way that we school and why we school the way we school. And, through a lot of studying and a lot of experience and a lot of talking to other people who are brave enough to try another way, that's how we started the micro school then, which is providing.
Yeah, a couple of families together, not under like the Department of Education in Dubai, or just by yourself?
Yeah, we are in partnership with an American alternative school, and so we're working together, and it is informal, so it is just a small group of families. It's a six of us at the moment, so very small, micro micro school. Yeah.
Can you share with me, how do you cultivate this kind of space where they like share their emotional or have like social skills develop?
Yeah. So actually what I was thinking about when you proposed this talk to me, this conference, and kind of what I was going to share, and the thought that it is not only potentially that we have teachers watching, we also have administrators, we have people who are leading adults, not only leading children. And so I wanted to talk about a tool which can be used in many settings, and that is the format of a sharing circle. So in many cultures, especially traditional indigenous cultures, they have this idea of a circle, people sitting in a circle. And this is something that I do every day with my students. We start the day with a circle. So after our morning kind of routine, little bit of fun and running outside and kind of thing, we start with a circle where we sit down together. It's also the way I start any staff meetings with staff members, or with parent meetings as well. We also start in circle. And also more recently, I've started to I introduced this format to my family, my own mom, dad, brother, sister, my family. And we've started actually having sharing circles as a family. So the format of a sharing circle is basically that we're all sitting in a circle. So we are all automatically on even ground. There's not one person who's standing or higher. It's not like that traditional teacher student where all the children are on one side and the teachers on the other side. It's automatically, physically, we are all equalized in this circle space. And then you have something called a talking stone, which can be, a shell or a crystal or just a stone or a piece of wood. It can be anything. Sometimes we use Lego blocks if we can't find anything, and that is called the talking stone. And ahead of time, everybody sets the agreements of the circle together. And the agreements can be, as many as you feel are necessary, depending on the setting. But minimum, you should, the agreements that I have, that in every circle, no matter where it's with kids or with adults, is the number one is mutual respect. So we respect one another. We are not going to, say anything towards another person, or, address, even if we want to address somebody, we're going to address them with respect. The second one is compassionate listening. So There's listening, then there's active listening, which is very, teacher friendly terminology. And then there's compassionate listening, which is listening to ourselves, listening to our friends with our heart, which includes not judging or making assumptions based on what we hear, just really withholding that mind part and just receiving and exchanging with your heart, from a place of love. So the second agreement is compassionate listening. The third agreement is the right to pass. That means if you don't feel like sharing, you have the right to just pass and just listen. That's your participation. You don't need to speak. And then the fourth agreement is confidentiality. So it's that everything that's said in that space is kept private or is kept within that space, within that circle. And so that sort of sets the tone. And then above and beyond that, you can add, more things if you feel whatever is relevant. And then the person who's holding the stone is the one who talks, and you let them talk. So depending on the context, you can set a topic. So some mornings in school with children, if you're a teacher, in the beginning of the year, you can start that off by having, children introduce themselves, say where they're from, their favorite hobby or their favorite sport or their favorite food. Just kind of get that for circle format used to get them used to the format. You can also connect it to curriculum by, using it as a recap from the day before's lessons. Like last week we learned about the animal kingdom. Okay, we're going to go around in the circle. Everyone's going to share 3 things that they remember or that they learned about the animal kingdom, or 3 questions that they have about the animal kingdom. Or you can use it for something that's more deeper. So for example, if there is an issue or if there's a conflict within the classroom, we can say, okay, how does this situation make you feel? That's, these children are arguing, or they had this big fight. There was tears yesterday. We had a big, anger was there. And how does everybody feel about it? What shall we do? How shall we proceed? And basically you pose a question. So it can be as specific, it can be curriculum related, it can be emotional, and that's the same in a staff meeting. You can use those same ideas, but the idea is that everybody gets a chance to speak. And in that time that person is speaking, everybody is listening to that person. We're witnessing that person. So whether that is somebody sharing something emotional, or they are the victim, or they are the one who instigated an issue, or whether it's just recapping some content that you covered as a teacher, in the end, you really get a sense of where people are at with the topic that you're going into. And it provides validation for every single person that you matter, your voice matters, what you think, what you know, what you imagine. If you're asking a creative question, we started writing stories last week in my class. And, one of the questions was to talk about the setting of your story. Where's your story going to be? And the children had to describe their setting. That was how we went around the circle. Each child, one was in a forest, one was underwater, one was in the desert. So they all had a turn taking that time to just paint a picture with their imagination. And that gives you a lot of information as a teacher as to what you need to support children with, when it comes to that actual writing time or teaching time, as well as how vivid their imagination is, or what emotional issues they're experiencing, how they process a problem or a conflict. And over time, as you practice this tool of a sharing circle, you start to affirm the person's sense of self. They feel affirmed in all these different capacities, that your knowledge of what matters, your creativity matters, your heart, the state of your heart matters, and how you're perceiving the world matters. And everybody is not only getting a chance to speak, but you're hearing all these different perspectives. And so it just builds an immense amount of compassion. It expands our knowledge. It gives, children get new ideas from each other when it comes to like the story and the creativity, and or even knowledge and reinforcing academic concepts. It's an incredible tool. And it takes a bit of time. Like it takes maybe 20 minutes or so, depending on the size of your class. I've done it with classes as big as 26 children, and it's very possible. If you really invest in setting up that routine and it becomes a part of the day, it is just an amazing way to start the day. Really, it's a really grounding time. And it will amaze you how much the children sit still and listen to one another if you set that from the beginning, that expectation. And, it's just incredible. I've had people come into the class and observe, not only with my group of 6, which is more recent, but also, when I had bigger classes. And it's just amazing to see kids who, other teachers, when they're in Singapore, when they were studying Mandarin, in Mandarin class, the child is running around, they're crazy, but in the circle time in our class, they're sitting quietly listening. Maybe they're moving. Sometimes I'll give them a pillow or I'll give them a fidget toy or something, but they know it's time to be present and quiet because your friend was able to listen to you when you were speaking. So now we are going to listen to them.
So this tool, you can use it in any kind of school. It doesn't have to be an alternative schooling. So
totally.
But it seems like you're role modeling what you're saying, especially when you're talking about mutual respect and compassionate listening. And this child you just mentioned, the Mandarin guy that was roaming around and playing and running, and in your circle time, he's well grounded and he's all listening. So it is all about the teacher. If you're really modeling what you are saying and feeling it from inside, and the word, your heart state matters, Yani. I love that. I care about your heart. I care about how you feel. I care about you. I can see you. This part is really amazing, and it makes every child into this kind of circle of the energy circulating around, the serenity, the respect, the compassion. It's all going within the circle time that you are explaining to us. I learned something about you from your bio. You said that your intention is to have conscious and righteous, loving and self-actualized children or students. So what is that? Tell me more about it.
Great. So conscious. So I believe, and I have observed that, innately we are good, we are kind, and that our body, our physiology, our brain, from a biological perspective, we are wired for connection. We are wired for kindness. We are wired, when we fight or when we hurt another person, there's a lot of conflict internally in our neurochemistry. It's not healthy. It's toxic for our system. So this is how I do classroom management, is I tell children, the right decision inside you, what is right, what is that honesty, about kindness, about being fair, all of these things. And when you are making a choice that goes against that, and that choice is not only hurting the other person, but also is hurting you, so it's really about holding children accountable and holding ourselves accountable as teachers, and modeling that, okay, sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes we react, sometimes emotions come in the way and we think unconsciously. And I, as a person who is committed to righteous and conscious awareness, I will then correct myself. So there are days when I have gone to school and I have told the kids, yesterday this happened, I yelled at you guys, and I want to apologize. I really want to apologize. Sometimes I actually cry in front of the students because I'm genuinely showing them, I'm modeling, and I'm genuinely feeling, remorse, or, in Christianity, you call it repenting. It's a genuine feeling of regret for the choice that you made, and you're recognizing that you're human, that you make mistakes, you're fallible, and we're not perfect, but we're gonna do the work that is required to heal the hurt, so that the hurt does not stay, that fear, that trauma, which is caused when I, as an adult in a position of power and authority, if I misuse or abuse that authority and yell at a child, we're human, we're, parents do it, teachers do it, we all do it. We even do it to each other, not just with kids. Yes. But it's not about not doing it. It's about how we self-correct, and that correction, the children start to learn that. And they only learn it when we actually model it. You can tell them, you can teach them the steps as much as you want, but if we ourselves are not showing them and doing it, walking that talk, then it's really hard. So yeah, so it's just the belief that innately we are all good, we are all kind, and that if you hurt someone or if somebody hurts someone, whether that is a murderer or a horrible person, it's not because it's because they are hurt people hurt people. So it's really understanding the world from that perspective, from a compassionate perspective, and it's something that keeps hope alive, that even in the most darkest situation, that there is hope. Even in the most darkest person or the darkest soul, there is hope for goodness there. And if given the right tools, if you put that acorn that I was talking about, if you put it on your desk, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to grow. If you put it in a sewage water, it's not going to grow. But if you put it in the right place and you give it the right soil and you give it the right nutrients, it will grow, and you can see this. Part of my education, actually, before I decided to be a teacher, I studied law. I don't know if I wrote that. I studied criminology, and we studied about the correctional system. I was living in Canada at the time, and I we learned about how the criminal justice system is mainly focused on punishment, and I'm not making excuses for people who commit heinous crimes or horrible crimes. We need to hold one another accountable, but there is an approach of punishing people, and there's an approach of supporting to heal those wounded people, so that we are not creating more and more broken people. We are actually building people up again. And that is something that can be translated into many different environments, including the school environment, where a lot of children sometimes get labeled. They get labeled as bad kids or bullies, or they get labeled as the, naughty kids. And that's an imprint, that's an expectation that they carry with them through a lot of their, schooling, unless they move to another school or they have a new fresh start or a chance to change that. But oftentimes it's the environment that is imposing that. And then they're just kind of doing the best they can, and sometimes that means that they act out, or that they push, or that they yell, or that they're hyper, or whatever the different labels are. So yeah, I guess it's just coming from the place that we are innately good, and that we live in a fairly broken world. We make mistakes, and it's not about you made the mistake. It's about, now what are you going to do with your mistake? How are you going to act next? The mistake is there, and it's not that great, but you can change it, you can survive it, you can be victorious over it, depending on how you choose to deal with it after that.
So it's very interesting, and you're bringing all humanity in your talk. I mean, just bringing the basic humanity. So we're so much away from basic humanity, and now you're bringing it back. Tell me more about the last thing that we want to talk about, because we are limited with time. Is tell me, what is the most a good, a very let me show you a strength in you that empowers you to move forward and shift the way you're dealing in life with education. One strength that you can see in yourself.
So as a teacher in the classroom?
As a human being.
As a human being. Okay. I would say that my faith in God, in Jesus, I believe in Jesus Christ, and that relationship that I have with Christ, I think is my greatest strength, my greatest resource. I think that we are designed to live in relationship with our creator, and so for some people, they have a connection with nature or the earth, or, different people interpret that differently. And I think aside from that, or broken away from that connection with our creator, we are trying to fill that space with different things. And I don't think that sometimes, I mean, I recently became Christian, just been 2.5 years now. And for me, this has been a huge journey in healing and really understanding even social emotional education and who we are, and the concept of wholeness, which is very central to our alternative school. Really understanding what that means, and we really only can be whole when we feel a sense that we are loved as we are, regardless of the choices we make, regardless of whether I make a mistake or have a bad day, or, that unconditional love is
is when you know that you are worthy of it and that that is who you are in your core. And so for me, I find that in my faith. And I really, I encourage, you know, even in the class, I encourage my children to really understand that we are all interconnected. We are part of a whole, you know, it's like we're a very big ecosystem, and that everything is connected to everything else. And you're not just like kind of the single thing floating around in big cosmos. You're actually a very valuable part of this whole design. You know, it's like a puzzle, and then you have one piece missing. You would see that, you would really see that that piece is missing, you know. So yeah, every piece is important, and I think that knowing that and realizing that is really an essential part of our sense of wholeness.
Amazing. So connecting to your spirituality is empowering the classroom, empowering education. So being authentic to who you are and what you believe in and living it is just role modeling your beliefs. Of back to humanity again. I mean, religion, going back to the teaching of Jesus, it's all about humanity. How can you be compassionate and loving and understanding and listening to people's needs and understanding why did they did this kind of mistakes? I mean, you're not going for punishing people, but understanding and how we can support and help to have humanity, a better humanity. So thank you so much, Deena, for this enlightening, conscious, emotional, social talk. Thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to have you in any other kind of conferences around. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you for taking the time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.